I used to work the night shift as a private security guard in a downtown office building in Milwaukee. It wasn't one of those towering glass giants, just a mid-rise built in the 70s with 9 floors, all concrete and steel, worn-out linoleum tiles, and the kind of fluorescent lighting that hummed louder than it lit. My shift was from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. Pretty standard. Walk the perimeter, check cameras, file reports if something felt off. Most nights were boring as hell. I'd bring a thermos of black coffee and kill time listening to podcasts or watching old horror movies on my phone. It was ironic, watching horror stories while sitting in a place that could easily be the setting for one. But back then, it didn't bother me. Not yet. There was one floor in the building that was completely sealed off. The 8th floor. According to building management, it had been gutted for renovation, but funding was pulled midway through. For years, it just sat there, abandoned. The elevator skipped it by default, and even the stairwell door was padlocked. But I knew better. Security logs showed alarms going off up there sometimes. Nothing major, just random motion detections. Management always blamed wiring issues. Ignore it, they'd say. Sensors go off all the time in old buildings. That was until the night I heard something with my own ears. It was about 2:30 a.m. when I stepped outside for a smoke break. Cold wind bit through my jacket, but I liked the quiet. Milwaukee at night had a weird charm. Empty streets, the hum of distant traffic, and that eerie stillness you only get in a city that's asleep. I took a drag from my cigarette, and that's when I saw it. Lights flickering in the 8th floor windows. Not all of them, just 2, side by side. They stuttered like dying bulbs, then steadied. For a floor that supposedly had no power, that was strange enough. But what froze me was the silhouette behind the glass. Someone was standing there, not moving, just watching. I stared back, heart starting to race. Then the lights cut out. Total darkness again. I rushed back inside, adrenaline kicking in. Cameras, nothing. The system showed no motion alerts. I ran the playback for the past 10 minutes. Nada. No light flickers, no silhouette, nothing. I grabbed my flashlight and went up the stairwell. When I reached the 7th floor, I stood in front of the chain door to 8. It looked undisturbed. Rusted padlock, heavy chain, dust thick on the handle. But I could feel something. Have you ever stood near something wrong? Not dangerous in a physical sense, just wrong on some primal level. The hairs on your neck stand up, your gut knots, and your body screams to turn back, even if nothing's happening. That's what it felt like standing at that door. Still, I was a professional. I logged the incident, contacted building maintenance, and requested a daylight inspection of the floor. They brushed it off, probably a trick of the light, they said, but they promised to check it out, eventually. That eventually never came, and the next few nights were quiet again, until Thursday. That night I was watching the lobby feed when the elevator indicator blinked. It was going up, nothing unusual, but then it stopped at 8. I waited. The doors shouldn't have opened. The elevator was programmed to skip that floor, but the indicator held steady on 8 for nearly a full minute. Then it descended. When it reached the lobby, I went to check it. The doors opened. Empty. I stepped inside. The overhead light flickered slightly, not unusual for an old building, but the interior was freezing, not cold, freezing, like winter breath, visible kind of cold. I pressed the close button, and as the doors shut, I felt it again, that same primal wrongness. It felt like I wasn't alone in the elevator. I shot back to my desk and rewound the camera footage. It showed me walking to the elevator, stepping in, and the doors closing. But right before they shut, the frame glitched. Not just a normal digital hiccup, it warped. Just for a second, but in that second, a black shape was standing right behind me. A tall figure, blurred, almost like it was part of the shadow itself. Then nothing. Just me, standing alone in the footage again. I sat there, stunned. My skin was crawling. I locked the elevators manually from my console, just in case, and called building maintenance again. No response. I left a voicemail. I didn't care how crazy it sounded. Something was going on up there. I didn't leave my desk for the rest of the night. I used to work as a night security guard for a medium-sized office building in downtown Indianapolis. The place was built back in the early 70s, a concrete relic of another time. I had the usual job: monitor the cameras, make my rounds every hour, check doors, report anything weird. Sounds easy, right? It was until the 3rd week of my shift rotation. It was a Wednesday night. Quiet. Too quiet, actually. The air had that heavy, dead kind of stillness to it, like the building itself was holding its breath. Around 2:17 a.m., I decided to walk the floor instead of just glancing at the camera feeds. Something about the east hallway on the 3rd floor had been bothering me, a flickering light I'd noticed earlier in the security feed that I couldn't shake. When I got up there, the flickering had stopped. The hall was bathed in that sterile fluorescent hum. I walked down slowly, checking office doors, gently testing each knob, all locked. At the end of the hall was the janitor's closet. It had a steel door with a small grated vent, like some kind of industrial cage. Normally it was shut and locked, but tonight it was open. Not wide, just slightly cracked, maybe 2 inches, enough to show that someone had messed with it. My spine stiffened. I called out, "Anyone in there?" No response. I stepped closer, hand on the flashlight at my belt, heart picking up pace. I remember the distinct sound as I nudged the door open. A low creak, then a heavy groan as if the hinges hadn't been moved in years. The smell hit me instantly, like mildew, rot, and something metallic. The closet was dark. I clicked on my flashlight and scanned the shelves. All the usual stuff: bleach, mop buckets, paper towels. Then I saw the boots. Black workman-style boots, worn down, toes frayed, sitting just inside the dark corner, with someone's legs still in them. I froze. I couldn't see the upper body, just the lower half, motionless. My voice cracked a bit when I asked, "Sir, are you okay?" Still no answer. I edged closer, half hoping it was just a drunk vagrant who'd snuck in. Then the legs moved, but not like someone waking up or shifting. They bent the wrong way, like the knees dislocated sideways. And then came this horrible scraping sound, like nails dragging across tile. My flashlight flickered. I backed up fast, real fast. My radio crackled on its own, static hissing like a whisper. Then suddenly, the boots vanished. Not like someone stood up, they just weren't there anymore. The door slammed shut behind me. I bolted. I didn't stop until I reached the security office. I sat there sweating, hands trembling. I replayed the footage, but the camera in that hallway, Cam 3E, was just static during that window of time. The only thing that came through clearly was the faint sound of a door creaking open and then shutting again. I filed an incident report, but I didn't mention the legs or how they moved. I just said the janitor's closet had been found open and then shut itself. I wasn't going to be that guy, the one who starts talking about ghosts and gets canned for being unstable. But I'll never forget that closet. I never checked it again for the rest of my rotation. 2 weeks later, I quit. And you know the worst part? A few months after I left, a cleaner found a pair of old work boots wedged behind the supply shelf, with no explanation for how they got there. The building had been remodeled 2 years prior. That janitor's closet, it had been sealed off since 1998. I used to work security for an old corporate office building in Ohio. It was one of those towering brick relics from the 1950s, long abandoned by the companies that once gave it life. Now it stood in a decaying part of town, empty and echoing, like it was mourning its own past. The job sounded simple: watch the monitors, do 2 floor sweeps during the night, and make sure no one breaks in. I worked the 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. shift alone, and I liked it that way. I was never one for people. But this building, it started to get under my skin. The 3rd floor was always colder. No matter what the temperature outside or inside, it had a chill like a basement freezer. And the hallway lights up there flickered sometimes, even after maintenance replaced them. I'd hear odd hums, low, almost like distant humming, but when I'd stop walking, the hum would stop too. One night, around 2:30 a.m., I was doing my second sweep. Everything felt normal until I got to that 3rd floor. My flashlight flickered, just once, then went steady again. I stepped into the long hallway, the carpet muffling my boots. That's when I heard it, slow, heavy breathing. I stopped, listened. It was faint at first, like it was behind the walls. Then it grew louder, raspy and unsteady, like someone was hiding just around the corner. But there were no corners. The hallway was straight. I shone my flashlight toward the end of the hall and saw nothing. But the breathing didn't stop. It got closer. I backed up, every hair on my neck standing up. The lights above buzzed and then one blew out with a loud pop. I jumped. Then a shadow moved. Not a person, not quite. It had the shape of a man, tall, hunched, but it glided along the wall like it wasn't bound by the floor. I froze. The shadow slipped across the hallway and disappeared into an office door. Now, every instinct in my body screamed to get the hell out. But like an idiot, or maybe just because of the job, I walked forward, heart pounding in my ears. I reached the office door. It was closed. I opened it slowly. No one inside. The room was empty. Old desks, dust-covered monitors, chairs that hadn't been used in years. I turned to leave, and the door slammed shut behind me. I swear to God I didn't touch it. The handle wouldn't budge. I pulled harder. That's when I heard it behind me. The breathing again, but now it was loud, close, almost touching my neck. I spun around with the flashlight, and the beam flickered again, but this time it landed on something. A tall black figure stood by the far wall. No face, no features, just darkness, shaped like a man. It moved, Not walked, moved. It was suddenly 3 steps closer. I backed into the door and rammed it with my shoulder. The thing was only 10 feet away now. I don't know how, but the door suddenly gave in. I stumbled out, fell into the hallway, and ran. Didn't stop running until I got back to the main floor. That was my last shift there. I quit the next morning. No job is worth seeing things that shouldn't exist. This story took place just outside Chicago in 2019. I had just moved out of my parents' house, and the only job I could find that paid decently was working night security at a retired high school building that was now used for storage by the local school district. The job wasn't hard, just lonely. The building was enormous and hadn't seen students in over 10 years. The classrooms were stripped of desks, hallways were quiet as a graveyard, and the old cafeteria still smelled faintly of bleach and old food. There was only one part of the building I actively avoided if I could, the janitor's closet down by the locker rooms. It always gave off a weird feeling. The walls were discolored there, like they'd absorbed years of moisture, and every time I passed it, I'd hear what I thought was the sound of something shifting behind the door. One night, just after 3 a.m., the power went out. The lights didn't flicker, there was no warning, everything just went dead. The cameras, the hallway lights, even my phone screen froze up for a moment. Then the emergency red lights kicked in, bathing the building in this eerie, dim glow. I was halfway through my sweep on the ground floor when I heard the closet door creak. Now mind you, it had been padlocked shut since I started this job. I know because I tried opening it once out of curiosity and found it rusted shut. But as I turned the corner, I saw that same door swinging open, slowly, like someone was pulling it from inside. There was no one else in the building. I called out, trying to keep my voice steady. "Hello? This is security. If anyone's in there, you need to come out." No answer. I approached the door, my flashlight trembling in my grip. Inside, the closet was pitch black. I stepped in. Immediately, the smell hit me. Dampness, mildew, and something else. Coppery. Like old blood. My light scanned the small room. Just shelves, cleaning supplies, and I froze. Scratch marks lined the inside of the door. Deep ones. Not like someone scraped a mop or broom accidentally. These looked like claw marks. Some were even streaked with something dark. Then I saw it. In the back corner behind some buckets was a small trap door. It hadn't been visible at first glance, but there it was, slightly open. I felt every nerve in my body scream, "Don't open that." But I stepped forward anyway, like something was pulling me to it. I pushed the trapdoor open wider. Beneath it was a shaft. It led into the old basement tunnels, decades-old maintenance crawl spaces that hadn't been used since the 70s. I couldn't see the bottom. My flashlight barely reached past a few feet. Then, I heard something from below. Thump. Then again, thump, thump. Something was climbing up. I dropped the door shut, stumbled backward, and ran out of the closet. As I turned around to lock it again, there was a hand. Not a human hand. Gray, long, fingers curled inward with nails like razors. It gripped the edge of the closet door like it was about to pull itself out, but then it stopped. The hand retracted slowly, and the door slammed shut with force that shook the hallway. I locked it, padlocked it. I even jammed a chair up against it for good measure. The power came back on 20 minutes later. The closet looked the same, silent, sealed, but I never forgot what I saw. I asked around the following week. An older janitor who'd worked there 30 years ago told me the truth. Back in 1979, a kid disappeared during detention. They thought he ran away, but years later, when workers did some repairs, they found traces of him in the tunnel crawl spaces. They never opened them again. I never did another shift in that building. There's something in the dark, something that waits, and some doors, they should stay locked forever.